Welcome to the Virginia Quilt Museum's next virtual quilt turning. We hope that you all enjoy these beautiful quilts that we have picked out for you today and that they work to inspire your creativity. This quilt is the Bucilla Quilt, circa 1930s. Mary Virginia Langston made this quilt. It was donated to the museum in 2009 by Carolyn Lynch from McLean, Virginia. Mary Langston, the maker, was from Surrey, Virginia. This quilt was hand-pieced and hand-appliqued using reverse applique. It was later hand-quilted. Bucilla was a company founded in 1867 by Bernard Ullman. Its original name was Bernard Ullman Company Incorporated, Lace, Linen, and Accessories. Later the name was shortened to Bucilla, which was an acronym of the longer name. Ullman began by selling silk-screened embroidery designs from a pushcart on the streets of New York. He opened a retail store in 1870, but by 1875 he was selling his products to other retailers. This company created the Millennia brand of knitting yarn in the early 1900s. It was exceptionally high quality and for a time comprised 70% of the company's sales. They also published books and patterns and sold threads, yarn, needle point kits, embroidery, crochet and knitting items, and quilt kits. Bucilla was a prominent advertiser in McCall's Needlework and Crafts magazine. The advertisement was most often found on the inside front cover and was a full-page colored ad. One or more quilt kits can be found in most of the advertisements. In the early years, most of the quilt kits were applique kits. Cross-stitch embroidery kits were also popular and were introduced into McCall's Needlework and Crafts Fall-Winter 1956-57. In the years following, most of Bucilla quilt kits were cross-stitched embroidery kits. Many of the crib and youth kits were done on pre-quilted fabric. This quilt is a fine example of work that came from these patterns and kits. Bucilla is still in business today and continues to adapt to the changing fads of quilting and cross-stitch. This quilt is a garden from the Fringe, circa 1997. It was made by 10 different fiber artists from southwestern Virginia. Each artist made individual garden-themed quilts and later pieced them together to make this entire quilt. Once joined, the quilt depicts a beautiful scene of vegetation and flora. They used a variety of styles to create each block. There is hand and machine piecing, embroidery, thread painting, and applique. To finish the quilt, they machine quilted it. The artists are as follows: Linda Fiedler, Ann Reardon, Susan Brittenham, Marilyn Hauer, Carol Britt, Chime Saltz, Betty Bryant, Elaine Boyd, Jenny Watson, and Sylvia Richardson. Can you see all the details in this quilt? Do you see the cat? What about the spider and the hummingbird? The butterflies? Do you see any irises? What's your favorite tulip? This quilt is called Greek Square, circa 1953. This quilt was made in Steventown, New York, and was made by mother and daughter Clara Reynolds and Phyllis Lindsley. It is made of multiple fabrics that include scraps, gingham, prints, homespun, and possibly feed sack material. This quilt is tied instead of quilted. The history of this design stems from the 1930s. According to Barbara Brockman, the pattern can be traced back to Nancy Cabot newspaper column and the Woman's World magazine in the 1920s and 30s. Both of these sources are Chicago-based, sold quilt patterns, and may be where the pattern originated. The Great Depression was a renaissance in quilting history because it allowed quilters to use the scraps of material that they had for something useful. It was also when the quilt pattern and quilt book publishing industry flourished and produced the industry that we are familiar with today. We want to thank you for watching our virtual quilt turning today. We hope that you enjoyed this, learned something new, and were inspired to create your own piece of art. If you're interested in more of our activities, other virtual quilt turnings, or donating to the museum, be sure to check out our website, vaquiltmuseum.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram.